Studies suggest we make around 35,000 decisions daily. Today, I want to convince you that some of them, especially significant architectural ones, are worth recording. Hello, my name is Vladas Diržys, and it's truly a privilege to be here today. Before we start, let me quickly introduce myself. I come from Lithuania, work as a solutions architect at Sportradar. And Sportradar, at its core, is a sports technology company collecting live sports data from over 700,000 events yearly and distributing that data directly to our customers in both media and betting space. Professionally, I'm passionate about domain-driven design and software architecture. And when I'm not at work, there is an above zero chance, as you can see in the picture, find me on a basketball court. Now, enough said about me. Out of curiosity, let's talk about you. A quick show of hands. How many of you have heard of architectural decision records before? Right, that's a lot of people. Now, please keep your hand up, not so quickly, if you or your team have written an ADR before. Still a lot of people. Now, please keep your hand up if ADRs are part of your ways of working. Some hands want to go down, some hands still up. Right. If you guys are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to me after the talk to talk more. I'm curious to find out more from your experience. Now, while we are going to talk about decisions, let's first clarify what do we mean by architecture. Well, one could assume architecture is some fancy drawing of a diagram. Actually, I would put it very simply. Architecture is a set of decisions. Gregor Hoppe, in his book, The Software Architect Elevator, illustrates this with a drawing of a house. Even though it has many elements of a house, one would probably not expect such a drawing from an architect. I hope, at least. But consider a similar sketch on the right. So the sketch is still similar, except for the roof. And this house has a steep roof because it's designed for a place with cold winters and lots of snow. And a steep roof helps the snow to slide off easily, and the roof overhangs stop the snow piling up in front of the windows and therefore protects the windows. So architecture is about making intentional, thoughtful decisions that shape structure and function of something. So just like the house determines how people live in it, software architecture defines how components interact, how well it meets the needs of its users. Right. So, but why does one decision work in one situation but not in another? Let's dive deeper into it. So the context matters. Consider houses around the world. In flood-prone regions, homes are built on stilts, help avoid water damage, and in Arctic areas, igloos made of snow provide insulation. So each design is perfectly suited to its environment, but would be impractical elsewhere. And similarly, in software architecture, our decisions must align with our specific context. And context in which decisions are made determine whether these decisions are fit for purpose. And by the way, this also means that there is actually no good or bad architecture. It's either fit for purpose or not. So the context shapes the landscape of our decisions, ensuring they are appropriate for the specific circumstances we face. But even with the right context, the process by which we make decisions also plays a critical role. This leads us to consider how we make these important architectural choices. There's this famous book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. In this book, the author explains the two systems in our brain, System 1 and System 2. So System 1 is fast, automatic, and based on intuitive thinking. And System 2, however, is slow, deliberate, and for analytical thinking. But it's also lazy. it is uncomfortable to be in System 2 for longer periods of time. Now, we can't make all the 35,000 decisions using System 2. But when making decisions with possibly big consequences, we should try and engage System 2. So enter architecture decision records, or ADRs. Firstly, ADRs enhance our decision-making process. They bring clarity and structure, ensuring that every architectural choice is deliberate and well justified, and this leads to more informed and effective decisions. Secondly, they are invaluable for knowledge sharing and onboarding. They act as a historic record, allowing both current and future teams onboarding smoother and easier. And think about it, when joining a team with already existing software and systems, it's often very easy to criticize the way the system was built. However, these decisions may well have been the best course of action given the context and constraints at the time. Thirdly, ADRs improve communication within the team and with stakeholders. By documenting our decisions transparently, we promote alignment and ensure that everyone is aware of our architectural direction. Fourthly, they facilitate change and evolution. As our projects grow and requirements shift, ADRs make it easier to revisit and adapt our decisions and provide necessary context to assess the impact of changes. And lastly, also ADRs help mitigate risks. They prevent us from repeating past mistakes by clearly documenting what we tried before. We also establish accountability. So in essence, ADRs are not just about documentation. They are about fostering a culture of thoughtful decision-making, effective communication, and continuous learning within our teams. So let's have a look at ADRs in detail. So back in 2011, Michael Nygaard introduced the concept of architectural decision records in his blog post. Back when he proposed a straightforward and lightweight template consisting of 5 components. Let's dive deeper into each of them. So first we have the title, which is the TLDR of our decision. It should be concise and descriptive, such as adopting microservices architecture. And normally one prefixes it also with a decisions ID. And at SpotReader, we find it also useful to capture the decision itself in the title. Then we have a decision status, which can be either proposed, accepted, rejected, deprecated, or superseded. Some teams in SpotReader also add date to the status. Status provides a clear understanding of the current situation. And one note on the superseded status, we have a status because ADRs are immutable. That's not to say that if there is a typo in ADR, you cannot correct the typo, but if, let's say, the decision changes, we should create a new ADR and change the status of the old one to superseded by the new one, as shown in the example here. After the status section, we have a context section. And as discussed at the beginning, context matters. Here we describe a problem we are facing, the constraints we are under, our assumptions and irrelevant background information. Here we want to explain the most important forces affecting the decision. We should think what context is important to remember for our future selves and future peers. Further, it is the decision itself. Here we describe the change that we are making or proposing. We should be using active language and be brief. And we actually can be brief in this section because the most of information we've probably already captured in other sections. And the last section is about the consequences. Well, every important decision has some ripple effects, some both good and not so good. And here we want to to outline the benefits, the trade-offs, and any potential risks. I also see teams often mentioning the positive consequences, but overlooking the negative consequences. But an important decision rarely has no negative consequences. The negative consequences will show that we consider those, and the positive consequences will tell why are we accepting the negative consequences. And having consequences defined allows us to look back at the decision, gives us some basis for reevaluation, and we can see if these consequences actually came to fruition or not. So we looked at the lightweight template, and while it provides a solid foundation, sometimes our decisions could benefit from a bit more comprehensive approach. This is where the extended ADR structure, as discussed in Jacques Reed's book, Communication Patterns, come into play. It is very similar to the original template, or the lightweight template, as it's called. However, it contains 3 additional sections: evaluation criteria, options, and consultation. So in the evaluation criteria, we would outline what's important in making this decision. Here we should list all the, or not all, sorry, architectural characteristics that are priorities and constraints influencing our choice. And not everything can be a priority. Under the options section, we document the considered options and evaluate each against our evaluation criteria. And this can be done in a very visual way. Let's look at an example. So as you can see on the screen, we have the first option evaluated against each of our evaluation criteria. Also at the bottom, we have a total score and also trade-offs listed. So evaluating the options in such a way enables us to compare the total score, which helps in the decision making itself, but also makes the communication of a decision with our stakeholders easier and more transparent. And finally, let's discuss the consultation section. While this section is optional, it's highly valuable because architectural decisions are seldom made in isolation. In this section, we document the advice and input we gathered while making the decision, during the decision-making process. This would include contributions from team members, advice we got from stakeholders, subject matter experts, or external resources such as articles and blog posts. By keeping a record of our consultation, we demonstrate due diligence. It shows that we made an informed decision after considering various perspectives and information sources. So we looked at the lightweight template by Michael Nygaard and an extended version from the book Communication Patterns by Jacques Reed. However, there are other templates too, but we'll not go into detail in this presentation. And while I advocate for this extended template because it encourages thoroughness and collaboration, it is important to be pragmatic. The best template is the one that fits your team's needs and workflow. Whether you stick with a lightweight template or adopt an extended version or something in between or something completely different, the goal is to make ADRs work for you and be a practical tool and not a burdensome task. Now, I'd like to share some feedback that I gathered from various team members working with ADRs. So, firstly, ADRs encourage critical thinking. One team member mentioned, and I quote, ADRs forces teams to really think of what they are doing, end of a quote. I would ask, can you afford not to? Secondly, ADRs facilitate collaboration. People with various roles, such as DevOps, architects, and others, feel more involved in the decision-making process. And I personally can attest to that. Moreover, ADRs enhance knowledge retention. As our teams evolve and subject matter experts move on, ADRs help to remember more and longer, thus ensuring continuity. However, we face also some challenges with ADRs, and time constraints are a common concern. Reviewing ADRs thoroughly, it's difficult with ongoing responsibilities. Another challenge is managing the volume of ADRs. The number of ADRs can grow rapidly in large initiatives, but it's a smaller issue in the small initiatives. And I'm confident that the rise of LLMs will easily tackle this challenge. And the last challenge is to avoid paralysis by analysis trap. It's important to find the right balance between being comprehensive and managing momentum or maintaining momentum. Right, so how do you get started? Well, first of all, consider thinking of any last or past decisions that don't have an ADR yet. Capture those, basically backfill recent decisions. Also, start noticing when a decision is or just was made. Create an ADR yourself, or suggest your peers to create an ADR, or ask for an ADR. And if you are, for example, in a leading role or an architect role, and you already have some meetings with your teams where you discuss architecture, consider discussing ADRs in those meetings. Introducing ADRs requires a cultural shift. And cultural shift requires time, but also culture can be changed. And the best way to change culture is leading by example. However, patience is key in this process. But the good news is that you don't need anyone's permission to get started. Just do it. And if making architectural decisions is something that you like to do or want to do, currently we are looking for a person to join our team. We are looking for a tribe architect here in Trondheim. And that's it. Thank you.